We're live. Are we live?
We are.
Oh, hi.
Hi,
Good
Sylvia.
morning, good afternoon. How are you, Max?
Amazing. Really great.
How does it get
And
any
you?
better than this? I'm great also. I'm actually very excited for this conversation. Here.
Me too.
Yes.
Me too, because this is
Where?
one of my
Here.
favorite topics and classes.
Yes, mine also. Here. I have someone here with me. Oh my God. So let's start, Max. Who are you, Max? Who is Max? And who were you before talk to the entities?
Oh,
No.
before talking to
Who
that's a
are you
long
now,
story.
actually?
I think that's more relevant. Maybe we can do a long version of a video another time to do the before talk to the entities and before access consciousness. But
Just
okay,
short.
talk to the entities facilitator, and Sylvia is a talk to the entities certified facilitator as well. So we've been doing this for a number of years. And obviously access consciousness certified facilitators. And this is the topic that we're going to talk about that we're particularly interested in because it's weird, it's wonderful, it's unusual. In a lot of places it's socially unacceptable. In a lot of places it's socially very significant. So we want to sort of like get into a little bit more into the advanced stuff as well. So we're going to cover a few of the little basis things about talk to the entities. And then also, if you have done a talk to the entities beginning class, which is a 2.5-day class where you get all of the foundational tools and so forth, like what then? What's after that? Essentially, like a lot of people might do a course like that and then not really use the tools and not really dive deeper in it for themselves, because you have to know what you know. No one else can tell you what you know. So to develop that muscle of being aware of entities and dealing with entities, you have to use the tools. So it's sort of that thing of some people might do the beginning class and then not really pick up the tools after that, which is like totally fine and choice. And so that's cool too, because you have all of the tools. Where do you start from at that point, basically?
Some people that I talked to told me that they never heard about the intermediate class, actually. Some of them, when they look for the advanced class, then they know about the intermediate because it's a prereq for the advanced
Because they
class.
have to.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. What if it's not just a prereq for the advanced class? It's so much more. It's the intermediate class. What is it for you? What do you facilitating the intermediate class? What is it for you, Max?
Yeah, it's really different than the beginning class. So the beginning class, like I said, is the first one, and then comes the intermediate class, then advanced class with Shannon O'Hara, the founder of Talk to the Entities, if you want to progress on like that. But the intermediate class is basically this. It's either a 3-part telecall or it's like a half-day, 4.5-hour class, which I'll be facilitating one on the 13th of April this month. So it's going to be like a half-day class essentially, and the prereq is the beginning class. So the intermediate class is like this next step of you get another manual, and it's not as big as the beginning class manual because it's just a few extra bits and pieces after the beginning class. But then it's really an exploration of what do you know? The question of when you've used the Talk to the Entities tools, what has shown up for you? And let's dive a little bit deeper into what you know and that awareness, because that is, like I said, it's a muscle. It's something that you develop. It's not something that you just like automatically have after you do a class. So the intermediate class is the next step of knowing what you know.
Exactly. You've been playing already with the tools. You know the tools already from the beginning, and then it's this deep dive with I love the manual of this class with different topics and everything. It's a deep dive onto what you know, and that's what you said, Max. It's so different because you already know, you already been there. And a lot of people say, oh no, I'm going to repeat the beginning class. I want to check that more. And that's okay to go to the beginning class and repeat the beginning class. And the class calls you when it's time for you to look to a deeper dive. That's For me, it's huge.
Yeah. So what I've found mostly is like it's a different energy. Like people at the beginning class, oftentimes it's the first time they're really actively choosing to deal with the spirit world.
Entities.
Okay. Yeah. And with the intermediate class, it's like everybody that's there has made that initial choice and is sort of like, what else is possible? So everyone is interested in more beyond that foundational beginning class. And that creates a particular environment of like, you can go further because there's a group of people that have chosen to go further somewhat. And then the advanced class is like the next step after that, essentially. And if you've done several beginning classes or you've done an intermediate class beforehand, then you just get more fluid with the tools and you're sort of like already walking. Rather than learning how to walk, you're already walking and learning how to walk even better, you know, and then starting to run.
It's kind of a relaxing to the tools, relaxing to what you know a little bit more.
Yeah. And then adding the experience that everybody has on that call already. Because what I found when I was learning the tools of talking to the entities, and still sometimes now when I'm like developing further with my awareness and capacities with entities, I really need to ask a question and discover, okay, what else have I not been willing to be aware of here, for example, you know, and then go a bit further and develop more. So it's the same with these classes. Like the intermediate class is this great literally intermediate class between beginning and advanced, where it's like, okay, let's go further.
And the fun thing is that no class is like each other. It's like if you've done beginning, if you've done intermediate before with other facilitators, with Max, it's never going to be the same. That's the good thing about the classes. The fun thing about the classes, it's the same manual, it's maybe the same facilitator, but it's never the same class because you're always changing. So how is it that the title of this conversation is, oh no, more entities. What am I going to do with this, with all the information?
That, actually. I think you came up with that title, right?
Yes.
I love that. It's brilliant because it literally is like the response of a lot of people. Like, I've done the beginning class now. Should I like not be aware of entities anymore? Shouldn't it all be like finished and done? But no, you're still aware. You're always going to be aware of entities. Like, it's the more you become the tools, which is that thing of practicing that I was talking about, you're building the muscle of being that, the easier it becomes. But then you're actually dealing with bigger things, right? Just like with money, for example. I like to use this analogy. A poor person...
We don't like to talk about money, so don't worry about it.
Someone who doesn't have money has problems that come with not having money. Someone who has a lot of money has problems that come with having money. Rich people's problems. And it's a similar thing with entities. Like, the more capable you become, you're going to be dealing with bigger issues, but it's easier as well. And you're actually more capable because you're willing to be more with the spirit world and in your own life, because it's like synonymous. Like, at least how I've found, the more I'm willing to be with the spirit world, the more I'm willing to be in my life. And the more I'm willing to be in my life, the more I'm capable of being in the spirit world. Because you're dealing with beings. You're dealing with beings that can be stubborn, that can be obnoxious.
Really?
Can be mean, that can be incredibly kind and beautiful and wanting to gift you more than you're willing to receive. So you've got to be willing to be more and step up in your own, what you're willing to be, to have more there. And it goes both ways, I've found.
And a lot of people want to go to these great beings, to the mega beings, and a lot of people, I want to receive from the mega beings, the beings of consciousness and the beings of light. And there is a way to go there. These are the classes that can facilitate you to get there. And Max, I gotta say, you are one of the kindest person I've ever known. That's why I'm so excited to be here, actually.
Aww.
And I never told you that, right?
Thank you.
For you.
Receive.
You are, and you're gentle in the way you talk to people. So being in the classes with a facilitator, a facilitator eases it out for you guys. That's why we're in the classes. We're facilitating your choice. In this case, with entities, with a deeper dive. So what are you looking for? What is it for you to have more awareness and receive more from the entities? To look for a class.
Yeah.
Would it be fun?
I'd love to throw this thing in as well, like, which is going back more to the beginning class too, but will be relevant to all of us. How do you perceive entities? This is really relevant to ask regularly, I think, like, because we always have more perception that is available. So do you perceive entities through your thoughts, like your psychology, essentially? Do you have particular moods or something that might signify that you're aware of entities at that point? Do you have more physical awarenesses? Or is it a knowing, like you just know there's an entity there, but you haven't quite been willing to deal with it? Or so what are your entity awareness signs and symptoms that you're aware of that you have not yet acknowledged totally? And the best way to find that out is to ask, okay, am I aware of entities? Okay, I'm noticing this thing. And I'll give you an example. For me, very much it used to be, and still is sometimes, but it's nowhere near as predominant as it used to be. This used to be like most of my life to some degree or another, was like this sense of paranoia, this sense of incredible wrongness, this sense of like something was imminently going to happen, something bad was about to happen, essentially, and hence that paranoia. And
wow.
I had that a lot. And then after I did like my third Talk to the Entities class, for those of you who don't know me, I'm married to Shannon O'Hara, who's the founder of the class. And when I met her 12 years ago, I wasn't interested in Talk to the Entities. I was interested in her. So she was like, hey, come to this class. And, so I did a few Talk to the Entities beginning classes. And for me, it was incredibly empowering because it was really showing me and empowering me to know what I know, but I wasn't really looking at the entity aspect. And I didn't even think that I was aware of entity. I was like, this is amazing, like empowerment. But then the third class, I was like going home at the end of the day. Yeah, she mentioned this thing of like the paranoia and the feeling of wrongness and all that sort of stuff in the class, and about clearing entities. And then I was riding home that afternoon, happy as, and then suddenly I just like noticed all of this like paranoia and wrongness that I was very familiar with. And I was like, oh, she mentioned this in class today. So I used the clearing tools as I was riding my bike, and immediately like this whole fog and like sense, or this emotion, psychology, this mood like lifted and changed, and I was happy again. And never in my life could I do anything that would change that mood like that immediately. Like it would always sort of like be in and out, and I just have to sort of like get through it, and then try and make myself feel better in a way, shape, or form. But in this, it was like immediate, and then that kept happening repeatedly, or like I kept like using those tools, and I was like, wow, and that's where I acknowledged for the first time that I was aware of entities. And that's how you get to know for you. Like no one else can tell you. You have to be willing to use the tools and start knowing what your signs of entity awareness are.
And it is different all the time. I not long ago, actually, I've been in Talk to the Entities since 2020, that I became a facilitator in 2020. And not long ago, I realized one of my symptoms were I would be hungry next to them. Because hungry for me, it was an Italian family and everything. It was something that it was so familiar to me. I'm always hungry.
You eat.
Come on, mangiare, ma va. And it was not. It was just, I started noticing it was when I was perceiving more entities. And then I was like, oh, is this mine? Is this entities? And I was like, oh my God, I've been using food for to get away actually from this awareness. And my life changed a lot after that. And I know that now, and I can have a choice, and I clean entities, and no more hungry. I don't need food anymore right now.
Sylvia, could you say a little bit more about that? Like now, do you recognize clearly what is actually your body asking for food, aka hungry, and when it's like that hunger for entity awareness?
Yes, I have to ask all the time. It's not because I'm hungry that I'm perceiving entities. That's all the time. That okay, is this my body telling me to eat, or am I perceiving something? What is it? The four basic questions. What is it? And is this entities or something else? And most of the time, it's entities for me, for my body. That's how my body shows me. And then I go to the choice. I can still eat, knowing that it's entity awareness, or I can say, oh, okay, it's just my body perceiving entities, and I can clean, I can communicate, and can do my business hours, or I can just eat.
Yeah, cool. That's really cool. And so I've done a lot of classes on the topic of food as well. So it's this really interesting thing how so often funny. Like people identify or misidentify the sensation of hunger, which can be a lot of different things. Like sometimes it can be being aware of entities. Sometimes it can be your body's thirsty, but it's still a signal of kind of hunger. But we tend to put it all into the same thing rather than being in the question. So I love that example that you gave, actually, because it is really, it's real for a lot of people where there's an awareness, but it's actually the signal is identified as hunger when we're not in the question of what this might be.
It's for being easy for me to perceive hunger with my body because of always eating with my family. It's really familiar for me. So I would never ask, am I hungry? Is my body hungry? Is it entities perceived? I never thought about asking that. It was so familiar. When I started asking...
Did anyone ever ask you? Did anyone say, are you actually hungry? Or is it like possibly this or this or that? Yeah.
It was actually, now it's time to eat. It was now it's time to eat. Are you hungry or not? It was never a question, actually. In my family, are you ready to have the meal right now? Happens a lot of me. Hunger being awareness of entities. Love the question. Thanks. Thank you, Jocelyn. It changed a lot. It changed a lot. And once again, guys, always ask a question, because it is, sometimes it's your body. Sometimes it's something else. It's not always entities. This is something that we have to be aware of. Always go to question.
Yeah. Yep.
And during classes, actually, I feel more hunger during the classes. My body eats more. My body eats more, or I don't ask.
But is that I've actually found that too when facilitating classes, is my body tends to, it requires more energy essentially, and food is like one of the ways to have that. But then when I attend some access classes, like it's really different too. Like my body is less, it's either more hungry or it's less hungry, but it definitely usually changes like what my body's asking for. Yeah.
And it's so funny because when I'm facilitating entities, I feel this hunger and I go to the question more easily because I know I have perceived that before and blah, blah, blah. But other kind of, for instance, when I facilitate talk to the animals classes, my body requires more food. Mm-hmm. It's totally different. So it's question, guys. So a question.
Yeah. Cool.
And that's cool. In an intermediate class, actually, I've perceived like I was zoning out more often. Like I was checking out from the class, and then feeling, I'm going to say feeling because it is, more hungry all the time with intermediate class. It's so funny because of maybe more receiving, maybe, for me.
Cool. Yeah. So
we went to food.
It's so relevant, I think, especially when it comes to entities, and for a lot of people, like Jocelyn was saying too. And I've heard that from a lot of people that have done classes, is that it's like it shows up as this hunger thing, and that's one of the signs, like you said, of you're aware of entities, and there's something you could deal with or clear or facilitate that would actually then give you more clarity of awareness of what's actually true for your body and for you, essentially.
And that's what the classes bring, the tools that you can ask. You don't have to be affected by it anymore. You know it. You follow your knowing. You ask questions, and that's why we have the facilitators, guys, because you bring your awareness, you bring your questions, and then you can be facilitated in the class with everything that you're perceiving that maybe you're so familiar with you never thought about asking.
Yeah. I'd like to add, I think, just one more thing, basically. I did a podcast with a couple of gentlemen yesterday, and they haven't done access consciousness beforehand. You know, it was, they're sort of like fitness trainers and in the sort of like the musical, in London musical industry, and they train people to like for stage performance, essentially, like to be fit for stage performance. They're called Fit to Talk, like fit and then the number 2 talk, TALK. So they do a podcast, and so we were recording that yesterday, and one of them was mentioning, so because somehow we got onto the topic of entities. I think they asked because they looked at my Instagram, and you know, which I wasn't expecting. But one of them asked, so how can somebody objectively know that they're aware of entities? It's not just something that's in their mind, for example. And what Sylvia was talking about beforehand, which is this thing of the question and then having your awareness, that is the way to be objective about entity awareness. It's actually not subjective. Like when you are following the energy for what you know, that is objective. That is being objective. And entity awareness is not something that you can have validated from other people. It's not something a group of people can align and agree on. Sometimes in a group situation, people, for example, like I talked in this class, people might be aware of similar things, but not everyone might be aware of the same thing. Like we all have different awareness, and we all have different, like we're hearing different entities and different, like we have different predispositions, basically. So what you might be aware of in regards to entities, the person sitting next to you might not be, and that's cool. Your objective thing is to follow the energy and to know what you know. And if it's not clear, then you kind of practice and you ask, and you sometimes have to force yourself to be willing to know. And that's different than concluding. That's actually like following the energy, what's light and what's heavy.
Exactly.
So there's this real practice thing of discovering for you.
And that's when Gary's voice, Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, Gary's voice come to me just for you.
I think a lot of people have his voice there occasionally.
Right? So funny. Just for you, just for fun. Never tell anyone, because your knowing, it's your knowing. Sometimes you want to share with everybody. It's so magical. It's so cool what you're perceiving over there. But then sometimes people just can't receive it, just can't acknowledge that magic exists or anything like that. It's just their word. And then you get frustrated because, oh no, she doesn't get it. And oh, am I crazy? Know what you know, acknowledge what you know. That's so never tell anyone. Just for you, just for fun, never tell anyone. Just acknowledge what you know, be aware what you are aware. That's so amazing. That's magic.
Yeah. And some people don't want magic too. They want to live basically in a reality that's sort of according to the 5 senses. And the other thing that I mentioned yesterday when we started talking about entities, I was like, if you look at the spectrum of light and the spectrum of sound that we can perceive with those 2 senses, let's just talk about those 2 senses, because a lot of people reference hearing and seeing. It's a very narrow spectrum, and there's a huge spectrum of frequencies outside of that we cannot perceive with those senses. So how do we think that only what we perceive in those small spectrums is what's real, but what we sense and what we know is not? Like, that's what I think is kind of crazy, and what a lot of people kind of believe in and force, I guess, that point of view. So what if your knowing was that bridging of like all of those other frequencies that exist out just from that perspective. And what do you know?
What if you're never crazy? What if you've ever known what you've known? Just different from everybody else.
Yeah.
That's all.
And maybe you are crazy, but it's probably better than fitting into the flock and just believing all of the same stuff, which from my point of view is actually crazy.
Exactly. And what if nothing's wrong? It's just choice. Everybody that has their choices, and my cats say, yes, go for it. What do you know about entities? What are your symptoms about entities, your signs about entities, and what do you know about the classes? What are you choosing right now? What if you could choose more to go further the beginning? Would that be fun for you?
Cool. I think we're pretty much done for the live today. So I hope that gives you guys a bit of a sense of like away from the oh no, more entities to what's possible, to like what's possible. What if this is actually like a gift and something that you can create with to have a greater life and a bigger life, if that's something you desire, more ease life. Thank you, Sylvia. Grateful for you.
Thank you, Max. And everybody's invited. We have a class, Max. When is your class?
Yeah, 13th of April, online. So anywhere in the world, 13th of April. It's going to be kind of like Europe time, starting in the morning of Europe, and then for about 4.5 hours. And yeah, you guys are invited. What would it take to have Portuguese translation as well? Thank you, Victoria, for translating this live. She's on a separate Zoom at the moment, translating for all of the Brazilians and Portuguese. Yeah, if you guys have language requests, you can do that as well when you register for the class, or just send us an email at ejg@maxzoulek.com. So
Yay!
thank you guys. How does it get better?
Thank you, Max, for this conversation, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
If you need anything, if you have any questions about the class, if you have anything that you want to ask us, reach out. We're here for you guys.
Totally.
You're not alone. You're never alone.
Thank you, guys. You're never alone because you have cats.
Yeah, right.
Bye, everyone.
Beijos. Bye.